Hi, welcome to the Please Bear With Us podcast, where we talk about family, friends, faith, and anything in between.
So, welcome back. This is the Thanksgiving episode. So,
You gotta spill the beans or
the yams.
the.
So, let's start with Joey, since we didn't really get into you too much last week. What is your favorite Thanksgiving dish? Dessert, main course?
Just give us something.
Give it sweet potato casserole. That's up there.
That's with the marshmallows on top and
Oh
everything?
yeah.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. You gotta have that. That's pretty good. I do not like ham. Turkey I can eat if it's warm and fresh out of the oven, or
White meat or dark meat?
white meat. Yep, can't do dark meat. It's a texture thing. Can't do it. Yeah. And then dessert wise, I'm pretty standard. Well, I'm a pumpkin spice girl, so pumpkin pie, right? We've talked
Pumpkin
about
pie.
this. Yeah.
Gotta have extra whipped cream or just...
Oh yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like the same thickness of the pie, the whipped
Mhm.
cream. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
exactly.
Mine would probably be... I don't like yam casserole. I don't like green bean casserole. I like stuffing if it's stovetop stuffing. I don't like homemade stuffing. It's too squishy.
Well, you don't know what they put in it. They put some weird stuff.
Well, some people they'll pack it in the turkey and stuff. It's
Yeah.
too much. Like stovetop stuffing, consistency is not too squishy, like almost jello consistency, and it's good, but dessert gotta be pumpkin pie.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, thickness, same as the pie.
Yeah.
I don't like it crusty, I always pick the crust off and
Really?
Yeah.
See, I like the crust.
Really?
Yeah.
Ugh.
I like sweet potato casserole now. When I grew up, I was like, I didn't get the sweet potato thing, and then I ate pecan pie and tried it, and I was like, okay, if I can handle that, I'll try this sweet potato casserole. And then, lo and behold, that is an amazing side dish. I don't know if it's a dessert or what.
It's
feels
almost like a dessert that you eat with your
Yeah.
main
your
meal.
yeah.
It's like a cheater dessert, but
and I like ham.
yeah, I like
So-
ham.
Okay.
My grandma used to make mashed potatoes. I had almost like dime-sized chunks in it, like potato
Yep.
chunks. Man, it's so good.
That's good too.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's not much better than good actual homemade mashed taters.
Yeah.
Now, I got a question. Is it pecan pie or is it pecan pie?
Oh, I say pecan.
I say pecan.
I do too.
I don't eat it, but I can say it.
Yeah, I don't really eat it. It's kind of a weird, not super sweet pie, so
My sister has made one before, and so I'm partial to hers because they're really sweet when you get them at the local
grocery.
grocery.
Okay.
Yeah,
Have you heard of people putting American cheese on apple pie? It's like a
Wow.
down south thing.
I
but it
actually
sounds
feel like I've
disgusting.
seen somebody do it. That just sounds terrible.
it does sound gross.
I don't like. I used to grow up. I used to dip Granny Smith green apples in nacho cheese, and that's crazy good. But I couldn't imagine.
Okay,
putting,
I like nacho cheese, so I would try that.
But putting American cheese or whatever would be on apple pie just doesn't. I mean,
No.
it's probably 6 of one, half dozen of there's still cheese and apples, but
Yeah, I don't know though. It's just the type of cheese.
yeah.
American doesn't.
What about the day after Thanksgiving? You Black Friday shop at all, or
For certain things, like weird things, got a buddy that got me hooked on these socks. They're Dickies socks from Walmart, and you can get them Black Friday like $4 or $4.99 for like a 10-pack. And they're
like the flannel ones?
moisture wicking. They're better than like Under Armour, Nike, but your feet like don't sweat in them. They don't get wet. Like I'm really picky with my socks.
You're now addicted, probably.
Yeah,
to-
but it's certain things because my feet cannot be uncomfortable now. Like it has to be a certain thing. But those socks for the money, best ones you can buy, best time of the year to buy them. Like I'll hit up Dick's Sporting Goods or like the outdoor store or a gun shop, trying to find a good deal there.
You go first thing in the morning, or you just get out and about when you
we
wake
kind
up?
of go in the afternoon. I mean, like this year, we've talked about our friends. They want to go. We'll see if we go, but it would be like, hey, let's go get breakfast and go hang out more so than probably go shopping. I don't know. Our one friend, she can shop. My wife would tell you I can shop, and I can, but it's more so with not just for the best deal. It's I'm looking for certain things.
Right.
But I don't go after the big TVs. I don't go after that
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not like waiting for that TV that's an extra $20 off that everybody's acting like a maniac over.
Yeah, Russian carts. I remember going to my mom's, a few years ago, meeting her at 4 a.m. and just going out shopping, like nothing in particular, just mostly to people watch and try to find a good deal on like Tupperware or something dumb, and I don't know why, but getting done at like 8 o'clock, eating breakfast and going home and going back to bed. Now, I'll go out about 10 o'clock and just scavenge, find cheap seasons of DVDs, for a while, I was
Yeah.
buying Big Bang
Mhm.
Theory and all that stuff, but
And we always like Rural King, hitting up stores like
Yeah.
that. That's kind of
Mhm.
fun. We've went back through and stopped at like some small shops.
like Home Depot and Lowe's, they always have good deals
the
on
tool
tools.
deals.
Yeah,
See, now
yeah.
I'm big into that. That's probably the one big thing I do go. What can I find there? Because you can get some killer deals. It's hard to talk sometimes.
Yeah, they always have good like. I'm a Ryobi guy. I do all the Ryobi tools, and they got like the drill set pieces. Like 200 drill bits and screwdrivers and all that stuff, and it's like $20. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Wouldn't even think they'd be able to produce it for that, but
Right. It's the time to get that stuff though.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
and like
For sure.
ladders, 17-foot ladders for like $100 and all that. It's nuts.
Well, they've got the little giant convertible ladder
yeah,
that's
I'm
from
gonna
like
try to get one
$300,
of them. I'm
$99
trying to get
bucks
one of
this
those.
year.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get one of those a year.
Yeah, they went on sale. The one year I picked one up, it was like $179, which was a great deal. But I just saw the $99 thing. I'm like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
that's almost worth getting another one for that
Especially
money.
now with inflation being 30%.
Right, right.
So Tyler, you shop at all on Black Friday?
Yeah, I like Black Friday. I also like Cyber Monday. I worked retail for a long time, so I did all my shopping when I worked at the establishment I worked for did 25% off. It just you had to work Thanksgiving, you had to work Black Friday, and then you would get a 25% off day later in the year. And so what you were allowed to do at that time was put things into the layaway. And so if you got it out and used your 25% off on layaway, well, anything that was Black Friday, you really can't put it in layaway. But like 2 days after Black Friday, there was a computer that had not been sold or something like that, and I was able to put it in layaway, and so I got that for a good deal one year. And so I try to buy I try to save up and then buy big on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and then Amazon has a day.
Yeah, Prime deals and all that.
Yeah,
stuff. Prime Day.
and those are the days that I shop. And then after that, I'm kind of like, well, I ain't shopping. And that, I don't know. It takes me time. What I used to spend my money on was Humble Bundle. It is a video game website, and you would buy just tons of software, tons of video games for cheap. And
that you never play.
exactly, you get to the point where there's so many. Like, I have so many more games than I'm able to play, and I still struggle to find one to play. Because there's part of me that's like, do I want to invest my time in this one or this one or this one or this one or this one? And then you're like, I shouldn't be investing my time in any of these at all. I just realized, I mean, like, I went through a phase where video games were all I did, and so now it's not something that I do all the time. I've probably spent 2 hours playing video games in the last month,
And you don't even have any kids. That's crazy.
I know.
At one point, my wife was coaching color guard and marching band and stuff like that. And so it was before the kids, and she'd be gone for weekends and stuff. At one point, there's a video game, Final Fantasy 15. I think I had put 160 hours in, 170 hours in. And it's crazy to think now that if I had invested that time in anything else, something, that I could, because now I kind of consider myself like an amateur detailer. Like I like to clean cars. I like to clean my own car and stuff, and I don't even get paid to do it. I just like to do it. Like my wife's mom is trying to sell her car, and I spent like almost 2.5, 3 hours the other day in the garage just cleaning the inside out because I don't think she'd ever cleaned it in like the 5 or whatever years she's owned it, and it took me forever, and I had a headache for 2 days after that from probably being all the chemicals and locked in the car or whatever. And but I mean, turned out great and looks awesome. I'm trying to get it sold here in this next week or so, but just to bring it back, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, all this stuff is when I try to buy all the car detailing stuff. And
yeah, I guess I kind of derailed us a little bit.
That's all right.
That's my shopping that I do as well. But
yeah, I hear my old age, and I've become, I guess the nice word is frugal, but I just consider myself cheap. I don't like to spend money.
I don't like to spend money on myself, but I'll spend it on other people, and then it's one of those things that's when I get myself in trouble with it. So
yeah.
What's crazy is I'm cheap, but like my wife was out of town one weekend for color guard and stuff, and I texted her and I was like, "Hey, guess what I did?" And she was like, "What?" And I sent her a picture, but I bought a car without. It was right after we were married too, and without telling her anything. And
did you live?
I'm still alive to tell the tale, but I had a stern talking from my grandpa, who, he's more or less the only male role model I had growing up, and now my wife and I have a $100 limit. If we try to spend anything over $100, we have to, get approval, which is tough nowadays. So
yeah. So you go to McDonald's then, and
yeah, exactly.
Guess I can't get gas.
Yeah, exactly.
Although the pump's shutting off on my truck at like 95 and some change every time. Like,
oh really?
There's a limit with, I guess, how many gallons now.
Yeah. There's a gallon limit of some kind.
Really bizarre. Because I can't even fill my truck up right now at a lot of gas stations.
But I found one. I don't know if she laughs at it, but it's kind of a thing we talk about where, the $100 limit, and I built an AR-15.
Oh, really?
And the parts, I would just buy the parts individually, and it'd be like $15 here, $40 here, $90 here. So none of them were ever technically over $100. So I never had to run up past, but the grand total was well over $100, but because they were each individually less than 100, I never got permission. But so she, I guess, had plenty of times to, give me, I don't know, like an argument about, because, doing dumb stuff, buying a car and then finding the stupid loopholes, but somehow we've survived through it.
That's called it's ingenuity.
Genius,
it's ingenuity. So what kind of car was it?
It was a Maxima, Nissan Maxima.
Okay.
I loved it.
Okay. I play a game called Escape from Tarkov very sparingly, but it teaches you about like management of like your guns and
like resources
and just like you have a backpack and it has like 10 slots and you have to be able to put a backpack inside a backpack so that you can hold more stuff.
Oh, wow.
And it's pretty crazy. I don't play it very often. I just started getting back into it. It's real, like it's MilSim, I think is what they call it, like military simulator. But it's not. It's real competitive with they have a good community. but it's a very funny game. I know that's off topic, but
So you just like AR-15 it or something?
well, yeah, you talk about the AR-15 and building it piece by piece, and that's what my friend would do in that game. Is he would find like bits and pieces and then build them and then sell them in the game money, not like real money, because they use like AKs and stuff like that. But he would build them and sell them and make them look cool, and people would buy them for like way more than what they were worth just because they look cool. It was a really it's a cool game, but I don't know. I always kind of worry about now that I'm like healthy, like what I put in, and so like I don't put in a lot of. I know it's a video game, so like I'm not worried about it, but at the same time, like I don't spend. As I said earlier, I've spent 2 hours on video games in the last month. Like I just the good times were had.
So every once in a while I'll get like a spur, and then while my daughter naps or something, or after my wife goes to sleep, I'll play video games for an hour or two. But, otherwise I don't ever. I even got a Switch, to so I could play on the couch or something when we're doing something while she's watching TV. But I don't think I've even turned my Switch on in probably 6 months to 7 months.
Really? Me either. But it's a good device.
Yeah.
Like I want to have it. I don't want to sell it, but I don't use it near as often.
So I brought it with me on an airplane and all
Yep.
that. I never got to turn it on because of my
really?
daughter, and
Oh,
I'll bring it to the hospital once the new baby comes, but I doubt I'll be able to turn it on. But we'll see how it goes. But
well, we have really hit a variety of topics for this Thanksgiving Day.
yeah,
But we really need to hit what we're thankful for, and also Joey. We haven't got to hear his story yet, and so let's go ahead and let's dive into Joey. I think.
Dive into. Oh boy.
Woo.
Well, so my story is. I always thought I didn't have a good story, and then I started to look back and appreciate some of the things that have happened in life. So I think I'll start with, I was circa 1992, so I was 6 years old. A lot happened at that age. My dad, years leading up to 92, made a lot of bad decisions. Alcohol was a vice. I wouldn't say he was, I don't know. Was he an alcoholic? I don't know. He drank too much too often, and when he did, he made bad decisions related to women. So I've got a couple little brothers from a couple different moms, and that led ultimately to my parents getting divorced circa 1992. At the same time, my grandpa, who is the man, when you think of a man who lives a selfless life and who is just genuinely the best person you've ever met, would drop everything he's doing to do everything for somebody else. That was him. And
I don't mean to cut you off,
Yeah.
but it must be a generational thing, because you're born 86, right?
85.
85, 86. I was born 86, and my grandpa is exactly the same way. It must just be a generational thing.
I think so. I think we really valued that relationship.
And how smart they were,
Yeah,
because they
the
could do
wisdom.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how he was. Could do everything. And it was just like, wow. So he passes away, and that was hard. I have some vivid memories of that. Memories of that. And meanwhile, in this time, I'm not going to say I grew up in church, but I grew up knowing church and around church, meaning we weren't consistently there, but we were there. So there was some foundation, but there was a lot of bad things going on, a lot of nasty things. And I could see where things could have really went sideways, and they didn't. Praise God. But they could have. So about the time I lose my grandpa, I lost who I considered just my hero and just could do everything, kind of like you said, Scott. But then this guy named Doug walks into my life, my, well, soon to be after that, stepdad, who was my grandpa 2.0. Super creepy almost. Super, super creepy. So, because it was like God said, time to go for my grandpa, but here's Doug. And Doug is the most incredible man you'll ever meet. And I always tell my wife, you've met my grandpa because you've met Doug. So that was a huge blessing, right? And this is the cool part. There's so many blessings that came through tragedy and through just mess and just hardship. But my dad, going back to him, he was a law enforcement officer, police officer. And I just always thought he was the best cop, and to this day I would say he was the best cop. And I mean there's stories to back it up, but it's my dad, you know what I mean? So parents get divorced, lose grandpa, gain a second dad, and life kind of goes on from there. My dad went through several marriages after, ended up married 3 times after that. My mom just to my stepdad. My dad, I always said, kind of got a lot of it back. I think God had a way of not paying him back, but kind of growing him up. Because my dad's redemption story is incredible as well, which is where we're going with this, because it's a huge part of my story. So, like I said, growing up in and around church, knowing church, mom being a single mom, kind of in that same modality. Pulling daycare was attached to where she worked in a wagon. I remember. I think I brought that up week 1 or 2 as well. I vividly remember thinking that was so cool, and just simple meals and simple trips to a local state park, and they had a lake and just a little fossil ground. The things that were simple, that didn't cost much, that we did, that just meant so much. But I never felt like I went without. And even if it was going to, there was a department store called Hills. I don't know if you guys remember Hills. Hills was, you could get clothes and stuff really, really reasonably cheap. But I remember always getting new clothes for school. Mom always made a way. So, I consider myself blessed kiddo. And then, moved out of town into the country, and kind of just kept doing my thing. Dad still kind of, doing better. My parents always got along. My dad and stepdad ended up being like best friends. No joke. Went to Florida when I played baseball, jogged on the beach together. There was funny nicknames rolling around for both of them. 2 big burly dudes just getting along, best buddies. There's pictures of them together all over the place. So many blessings came out of that, because it was just unbelievable. My stepdad, my dad, and I'll get this, passed away in 2020. My stepdad was one of the casket bearers.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and was, crying and upset, and it just, what a blessing, right? Like I would never change any of this, and that's a huge part of my story as well. So moved out into the country, and some time goes on at this point, and I'll fast forward now to my senior year. I didn't really date a lot in high school. I was the kid in high school that I drank a little bit on the weekends, but other than that, I never had interest in drugs. Really not much interest in alcohol, and I was always the kid that just the girls that wanted to date me were a little too wild for me. So just never had just much interest, in that scene. So walked in senior year, went to a small school, but walked in first period, it was art, senior year. And there's this little girl wearing blue Dickie pants, her white and blue Puma shoes. And I just thought, man, she's cute. And I'd seen her, but I didn't know her. I'd seen her getting into a girl that I went to school with, her car. Well, they were sisters. They didn't look anything alike. Never knew it. So I ran up to a buddy. I said, hey, who's that girl? And he was like, "Why are you asking?" And I said, "Just tell me who she is." Just kind of one of those things. So, well, lo and behold, that was my future wife. So she was 2 years younger than me, and we hit it off from the get-go. But it was very innocent and flirty for the first couple of months, and November of 2003, we went on our first date. She got to meet my entire confusing, dysfunctional family in one fell swoop at a football game, including my dad and my stepdad, who were there together. Like, it was fun though, and so that's when the journey began, 2003, with her. So we were young, and I was older than her, and our story, smooth sailing for the first couple of years, and I'm doing my thing locally in college at this point. But some bumps started coming up in the road, and we had a little breakup here and there, but nothing significant. But we started growing up, and we started growing up at different points in our life, if that makes sense. So, I was always the person. I've mentioned this. I'm a worrywart. Everything you say, I take it like, oh crap. Did I make you mad? It's some insecurities, right? Mm-hmm. So I had some insecurities, and I'm sure that probably didn't help the situation as well. But she's growing up, and she made some choices, and I made choices. We all made choices, and finally, some really tough things were happening. And at this point, I didn't even really fully understand what all was happening. But for the first time ever, I broke up with her. And this was shortly before we were initially actually engaged to be married. And she said, "I'm not ready to get married yet." That was the first thing. So that kind of was a little bit of a heartbreak, but a flag to me. But then something went off in my head that we needed this time apart. And I broke her heart, mine in the process. But at that point, there was so much going on growing up, a lot of different challenges. And this is all public information per se. We share our testimony together and our story together a lot. I'm not going to get into the weeds about the details at this point, but it was about a month, maybe even 6 weeks we spent apart. And that was a long time for us. And I was hurting, but I knew it had to be at this point. Like, that's where I think it finally clicked for me. And it had to be. And then one day she sent me a message. She said, "Hey, how about we run into each other at it was a local Mexican restaurant?" And I said, "Sure." And we kind of never looked back from there. And, her and I, she ultimately later on even disclosed about growing up and some of the things. And I am and I was very grateful for a woman a godly woman that felt like she needed to be honest with me. And it was all things that were probably understood that, just never told, right? And we ended up married in 2011. I had to think about that because it's been a minute now. So 8 years after we first started dating, married, and unexpectedly pregnant within about 4 months of being married. But God had a plan, and now we've got 3 little boys, 10, 6, and 3, and they're wild and crazy.
Now, were you both Christians when you got married?
We were. So actually, I need to go back to that. I'm glad you brought that up because you skip over that, right? So when her and I, so Mary and Joey, we've talked about the Mary and Joseph thing. She actually is the reason I kind of really started consistently going back into church. And it was a Church of Christ setting, and we had some disagreements because they have some different beliefs. but it was very interesting because that was so crucial in us growing together spiritually. But I went to 2 different churches with her and her family for many years, and that was a big part of our lives. But it was big for us because our spiritual growth through that was, although I don't want to say exponential, but it was big. Like, we learned a lot and we grew a lot together through that. So we got back into church, got married, and one of her parents, well, the church her parents still go to, and shortly after made the decision, hey, we're going to find our own home church. And that's kind of when we kind of started looking at the Bible and saying, hey, here's where our foundational beliefs are, and here's what we feel like we need to be fed and how we need to be fed and what we're looking for in a church. And that's where we found the church where we're basically at now. So I'm a nurse by trade, and we'll fast forward. I became a nurse in 2008. I graduated. So I went emergency room. That's what I do. Became a leader within that sector and managed a smaller ED and then a bigger ED. And it was a nudge by God to go to the bigger ED. But 3.5 years into that, that job was very consuming. So to the point where I was working my life away. And 2020, I lost my dad unexpectedly. My wife calls me. I think it was 4 phone calls before I finally answered. And I was actually doing an evaluation for an employee named Mary, another Mary.
Wow.
And
quite contrary.
Yeah, right. And I'll never forget that day. But I got that phone call, and my wife says, you need to come home. So as guys, we're all like, what does that mean?
It's never good.
You need to come home. Why? You need to come home. Something bad's happened. Okay. You need to tell me. You need to come. No. Are my boys okay? First thing, right? Mm-hmm. They're fine. And then she broke down. She said, it's your dad. And my dad was, at this point, the man I told you about initially, who was had a drinking problem and was unfaithful to his wife, but always was a great dad, But this was the man that he made a complete 180 and was involved in church, same church, was active in the church as well, and had completely turned his life around. I mean, this just the story of finishing strong. There's a book out there, but finishing strong, right? The story of finishing strong and redemption, and just all giving, just no take, kind-hearted, watching him with my boys, and just that was a hard time because it was so unexpected. He was out doing what he loved, camping, and a cardiac event. So nobody else was there with him. My stepmom had went home to get the house ready or get groceries or stuff packed, and it just super weird. The officers that showed up, we knew. My wife had done one of the officers' hair, and I knew both the officers, him and the other one. They had my phone number. We found out because of all of that. Like, it was just super weird. Everybody involved. The whole reason they found my dad was his neighbor was going to be shutting the power down to the campground. The next day, his neighbor was a good buddy of his as well. There was just a lot of connections. So it was his time. Mm-hmm. And I share that story about Dad passing because that was the aha moment, I think, when I finally said, okay, I got to make a move. And my family has to come first. So I stepped out of that leadership role, and ultimately I'm back in a leadership role, but it's a much smaller facility, and it's kind of a sweet spot. I feel like I'm called to lead, but in the right setting with the right support, but putting my family first, right? So we work to live, not live to work, So anywho, losing my dad, big part of my story, my testimony, because I think that's when I realized the power of redemption. That's when I realized I do have a story. And that sounds crazy because I didn't acknowledge a lot of the past before. And I didn't understand or appreciate what all the growth had been for my dad that I had witnessed, which was, that's a testimony on its own, right? Mm-hmm. Seeing somebody go through that. but he had turned his life around to the point where when he passed away, I said, what's the reason? There's always, I was trying to look for that reason because you're hurt. You're hurt. Like, God, why? You ask those questions, right? And then I realized, I always said, I said, God, if I could just have more time with my grandpa, going back to my grandpa, right? Well, I realized I did. I saw my grandpa through my dad. My dad had turned into my grandpa, and I never in a million years would have imagined that looking back. But he did. I vividly, I was like, oh my goodness, he was playing with my boys how my grandpa played with me, and he was smiling and grinning at my boys how my grandpa grinned at me. He turned into his dad, who was the most incredible person, right, I'd ever met. Through his death, I mentioned I had two little brothers. One we were always in contact with. The other was adopted. At one point, his mom, a dad had adopted him. My dad was never really a part of his life. I mean, there were some memories and things, but that was about it. But we got back in contact with him, and he's now part of our lives.
That's cool.
There's so many little things like that, and just to understand redemption and just God's grace and mercy and His power, and that was really cool. So. Now, I'm doing my thing. We're camping because of my dad. That's something we shared with him in a memory, and now we're doing that. We're kind of carrying that as our little legacy for him, I guess, or memory of him. And
very involved at church too, right?
Yeah. Trying to get more involved in church and do more. We've been able to facilitate a rooted class recently, and that was a huge blessing. And we've got the opportunity to do some other things in the podcast now, but living life's not always easy. And being married with kids is one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it's it's the best thing I've ever done. And it's a big passion of mine to actually share that story too. We talked about the Facebook family last
That was
3
the
weeks
first
ago.
podcast.
Yeah, that was the first one, right? But I think for young couples, dispelling the myth of the Facebook family is such a important thing, because it's not always rainbows, unicorns, and butterflies. It's going to be arguments. It's going to be tears. It's going to be frustration. It's going to be heartbreaks. It's going to be losing your temper, losing your sanity sometimes in the moment of being married and having kids, especially. But understanding that, okay, yeah, that may be the case, but there's so many good things to be grateful for. And
nothing worthwhile is ever easy.
No, but it grows you, though. You grow together. So, yeah, life's pretty awesome. It's hard right now financially. We're having some struggles right now. But I think everybody is, and I stress about money. That's a vice of mine. We've talked about as well. So, I'm doing my best to have faith with that. I will tell you, I'm the least perfect person you'll ever meet.
We were all giving you 10 out of 10 over here on the sideline. But
Right. Listen at you. It's interesting though, because so Tyler, we've heard his story. Struggled with some mental health struggles, right? Scott, some drug in your past. Mine is the stress, the overthinking, the insecurities, right? The worry, all things we should not be doing. We all have them. They just look different, so.
Well, and God can use it.
Yeah.
Use everybody.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what their past.
Exactly. Thankfully.
Yeah. But He puts us where we're supposed to be, who we're supposed to be with and around, right? And He uses us through our stories, and I think that's been the power of sharing our stories.
Well, what's that saying? Every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future.
Yeah.
So let me ask you something. At what age? Because you said 5, and I was, it's 2020 when I was saved. How old were you when you got saved?
I totally left that out, huh? So that's actually back to my dad. So the first moment where I really wasn't sure, I had a buddy of mine, a neighbor, who came over preaching doom and gloom one day about the world's going to end by such and such date, and I was a fairly naive kid at that point, and it freaked me out. And mom and I prayed.
Did he have the Mayan calendar?
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah, mom and I prayed together, and that was, I don't know if that was really when. Like, it's funny, but when I do know, so I started going to church with my dad, and a lot of cool connections. But in December of '99 is when I know, without a doubt, I was saved. I was baptized in January of 2000, that first weekend. So that would have put me at 14 years old. I just turned 14. So that was my first really involvement in a youth group, and actually a lot of the people from our current church came from this church, smaller church that unfortunately had fallen apart. There were some struggles, but there were some ties back, but yeah, that's when I accepted Christ, and still trying to live that life better.
Aren't we all?
It's a lifelong journey, I guess.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes, though. I'm not in my Bible every day. I'm not, I'm not good with that. I think that's a little bit of my ADHD as well. I'm that person wholeheartedly. They say it makes a good ER nurse, but beyond that, it makes for a messy desk, and I start 27 projects at once, and don't finish a single one of them till I'm ready to. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. That was awesome. Since we're being thankful anyways on this Thanksgiving podcast.
It wasn't necessarily wasn't a crazy tree. It doesn't have a lot of branches out. So
yeah.
It's pretty straightforward. Not a lot of jumping back and forth. But so do you remember your life before being saved and after? Like, can you could you tell the effects?
I could. I was more convicted is the only word I can describe. Like, I had more awareness. I've always been that person who wants to do good, who does, and I mentioned this before, I don't want to let people down. And then when you start looking at it, I don't want to let God down. Like, that was a big, I think, a moment for me where I was like, hey, this is beyond just letting myself down, my family down, my friends down. This is about letting my Heavenly Father down, right? Like,
right.
The Almighty. And even then, you don't fully, I don't think even at 14, understand, but you start to get it, right? You start to get it. So that was huge. It's funny, when I tell my story alone, I feel like I miss so much. Mary and I really, we just recently started sharing the story together, because really together is where there's more power in the story. And, she went through, I was very lucky in that I didn't have to go through as many hardships. She went through many more hardships, and they affected us. But once again, I am just baffled for the fact that she was able to be humble and fall flat on her face and tell me, you know what I mean? Here's everything. And I'm doing this because I love you, and this is what I should be doing. And in the moment, I was mad, but I didn't. She remembers this more than I remember this, but my heart responded with, I'm glad God's given me a godly woman who would tell me this, as hard as that is. You know what I mean? Like, who would love me enough to be honest with me, because I don't think everybody has that.
No. I mean, honesty is so. That's one of the hardest parts for me. Is like, I've got my parents were honest with me. They're like, Tyler, like, you ain't thinking straight, and that was. What do you mean you ain't thinking straight? Or I'm not thinking straight. You're not thinking straight. That was my response back when I was manic. But truth tellers, having truth tellers in your life is so important. So I'm happy for you. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah. It's definitely a blessing to have a, God-fearing, Christ-following woman in your life, even, someone you share the same roof with. I mean, because when my wife and we got married, neither of us were believers at the time. And my grandpa, he officiated our wedding, the one that, is more or less my, male role model growing up. He officiated the wedding, and, he had the whole, script wrote out, and I thought it was fine, but, my wife disagreed with me, and we took every single thing out that had any mention to traditional marriage, any mention of God, any mention of, anything religious based. It was all gone.
Mm-hmm.
It was all taken out. So maybe in the future, maybe if we were ever to renew our vows, we'd be able to, make that vow in front of, we made it in front of God, but we didn't put him in the vows
more of a
necessarily.
legal marriage versus
Right.
a faith-based marriage.
Right, because, usual marriage, you make a vow to God through thick and thin and sickness and health, and I don't think, I don't think God's name appeared in
But
Yeah.
that
our
makes
wedding at all.
that makes your story even greater, though. Like, in my opinion, like your wife was able to be the first, I think, in your family, right, to get saved, like, and then you got saved.
Correct. Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, just a few weeks ahead of me. I don't know what my deal was. I was still trying to fish it out, but my wife, she, because it was always, we were going through it at the time, and she was saying that she kept hearing something in her head saying, let me in, let me in.
Wow.
And I think it's in Revelation where he says, I stand at the door and knock.
Yeah.
And, I think she had read that, and she was like, what other option do I have at this point? You know what I mean?
He's there.
He's there. He's right there. He's pursuing me. So she, she went up to the altar, and she got saved a few weeks before, and then, me after. And it was only a few years ago for me, so I can tell the difference from before and after,
Mhm.
and the haze that gets lifted off, the hope now that you have, and just the whole outlook of life is completely different. And knowing, you get up every day to be the ambassadors for Christ, and I love waking up. I love getting out of bed. I love going to work. I love spending time with my family. I love, what's not to love about life? Every
Yeah.
day is a blessing. Why not?
it's
live
so
it?
crazy because, like, my life kind of changed. I don't know if it's medicine related but like I used to have that where like I would wake up like every morning like happy to be alive and just have that hope. And then after my latest rock bottom, it was very difficult for me to get that back. Like, and I still struggle with it a little bit to this day. Just because, and it's something like I'm thankful for being able to be an ambassador. It's just, I feel like I got hit by a baseball bat this time. And like, I'm trying to be an ambassador while bruised, maybe.
Yeah, trying to
Like,
find your bearings and
yes,
recuperate at the same time. Yeah.
and so I'm discombobulated, and
That's a good word.
it is.
You're a wounded soldier, right?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say soldier.
You're
but-
Well, you're in God's army.
yeah, God's army. Not going down this path again.
Oh, the Lord's
So-
army, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, the
Well-
Lord's army.
So Scott, you said something like, and I think it just made me click because I was thinking it. You kind of said it without knowing you said it. So your wife got saved first. It's interesting. We're the leaders, right, of our household. We're supposed to be. How could we always do that? I don't know. I can only attest for myself, but our wives, I think it's cliche to say, but it's so true. They're our rock. Your wife, it started with her, and then it kind of helped. There's a lot of value in that. My wife, very much the same way she pushes me. She's my faith strong, get over yourself, stop worrying about it. God's got this. Wife, you know what I mean? She is, and of course we know our ultimate rock is God, but I think He gives us our spouse, and it's probably very much a two-way street. And they would probably say, I don't know, but
Yeah, I don't think I would have started going to church again without her,
yeah,
or even tried to pursue a relationship with Jesus or anything like that without her. Yeah. Because my life was not headed that way.
I would agree with you. And not that I was doing ever bad things, but I think that it's just so much easier sometimes, right? The right way is the hard way. But I would agree. My wife is the same. She's pushed me to grow spiritually because she needs that. They need that out of us. Your tall blonde will need that out of you, Tyler.
Yeah.
But it's such a cool concept, because that's what it means to have a relationship with somebody, to be married, right? To have that marriage. I think it's you push each other, you support each other, you lead each other. And I think kind of the old school thought was, well, you're the man, you lead. And you do. But mom, the wife, is the mom and the wife, probably working while being mom and the wife, putting up with us and the kids, and still rooting for us as our biggest fan.
Love our wife like Jesus loved the church, which He died for the church.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And that's our number one, too. Yeah. That's hard once you have kids to even think of it. Your wife still comes first. Like, that is a whole topic of conversation. So, I don't know. Really cool.
So let's move into, we're both thankful for our wives, so that's a good place to start and transition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be I don't know where, like, it would be crazy to, like whenever you die, I guess, if you were able to see different, like, branches of the way your life would have gone and different things occurred. Like, what were to happen if we had never met our wives, where our life would be, if the traversal of our life would have been, I don't even know if I would have been in heaven at that point, because nothing was leading that way. But thankfully, I am where I am because of her.
So I don't know. It goes back to what I said earlier, I think. I would not change a thing, and neither would she, that happened between her and I, or while we were together and dating and growing up together, and because it was the confirmation we needed that we can do this thing called life together, and we're supposed to do this thing called life together. And I think it's sometimes when we don't let the process play out and we force things, like, so we don't do what God's putting in front of us to do. We don't follow what He's putting in front of us, I should say. I think it does. It changes your trajectory totally if you're not compliant or willing or patient.
I think God's timing has everything to do with it, too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I met my wife at the perfect time, and I would hope that she would say she met me at the perfect time.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But, like, we got married, and, as soon as we were married, we wanted to start a family, have kids, so we just couldn't, and fertility issues, I don't know if it was me, so, I got tested, and inevitably it was her, so, we started taking medicine and stuff, and I just feel like it was, God knew we weren't ready, so financially, mentally, spiritually, anything like that before He's like, okay, now you guys are ready to have a baby. I guess most of the time, you think of like 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds that have a baby, they're not ready, but I feel like sometimes, God's timing is everything. So we were blessed with a child when He, thought we were ready, which thinking of right when we were newlyweds and stuff, there'd be no way that we'd be able to have a baby.
He knows what's best for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is. It's awesome to think about, but it's
Another thing to be thankful for.
for so many things.
Well, especially
Yeah.
because you pray for years and years to have a baby, and you start losing hope and stuff, and then
It's kind of how I'm like trying to. I'm the only one that here that's wifeless. I'm girlfriendless and all that stuff, and I'm just trying to be thankful for my singleness. And like I'm in a stage of life where I'm able to see my family. I'm kind of the last 10 years of my life have been hospital rooms and manias and all kinds of stuff, and so now I'm like I'm going to take advantage of hanging out with my family and actually just being thankful for them while I can, because once I start the stage of life that is a wife and kids and stuff like that, it's time's going to be so much more. I mean, time's precious as it is, but it's going to be so much harder to spend time with the family, and just so being thankful for what I have. Like I have a nephew and I'm able to spend time with him right now, and that is something that I look forward to. It's like, hey, I may never have a son, I have no idea, but I at least have a nephew I can hang out with.
that's
And so
something they'll never forget. I grew up. I had an uncle that would take us sometimes on the weekends and play video games with us and stuff, and I always remember that. It's always something that'll stick with me. Just
Yeah.
away from home, have fun, not act. You don't necessarily act a fool, but you just have fun. You don't have any responsibility. I don't know. It's just something that you would never forget, and you end up taking it for granted because you feel like it's always going to be there. But I don't know. I just remember thinking, how awesome it was for my uncle to come just hang out with my uncle.
I think a lot of times we get so caught up in our circumstances that we don't appreciate and understand how blessed we are and how thankful we should be.
yeah.
And I think that just something I want to say is just encourage people with that is slow your roll, sit down and think of at least 3 things you're thankful for, even just today, because you're going to say it. You something. First off, you woke up.
You had food to eat.
You had food to eat. Got a roof over your. But even beyond that, there's so many huge things.
Yeah.
And I think we just we are our own worst enemies, and I think sometimes with Thanksgiving we're looking once again for the crazy things, and absolutely keep it simple, but first and foremost, be thankful for those you have, family, friends, whomever, because life is precious, and we've all dealt with loss. We've all experienced that. Be thankful for the basic needs, but be thankful just for the opportunities that God has put in front of you, and I think we can't pity ourselves. Easier said than done, but there's a lot of good. We're luckier than 99.9% of the world, right? Like, there's a lot, and I say the word lucky, I know, right? We're more blessed, but lucky. I like the word lucky right here. So I just want to remind everybody, don't feel too sorry for yourself, and do step back and really appreciate the blessings you do have, because you have them, and even when life gets hard, we've got them. When I lost my dad, I had the blessing of a bald eagle as a reminder from God. I firmly believe he flew over, he soared over, and just kind of floated 20 feet above our head. And that eagle, my brother-in-law told me, I don't know if it was that eagle, but a eagle was perched on top of the police station as we drove down by the funeral procession. They had the fire truck and the flag. I didn't even see it. kind of freaks me out thinking about it.
It's
But I'm thankful.
kind of scary, but kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I've got an eagle tattoo on my arm. That's why, and it's got a green eye. My dad had green eyes, so the eagle, was on the back of the camper, over the tire cover. It was the tire. I never noticed it. The eagle was all over the place. His radio station was, 95.3, the eagle. So, God's got a way to bless us through tragedy, even through hardships. And I'm grateful for that. That's just there's so many examples, and I want to encourage you guys and just everybody else. Just find them; they're there, and speak them.
Yeah.
I think that's important too.
I mean, it's a blessing to be here, just in this moment and today, but as well, definitely be thankful. And I mean, please bear with us as we think of more things to be thankful for.